Okay, so lesson 2-3, factoring trinomials. All right, so first off, trinomial. Do you guys know what the word trinomial means? Yeah, like a tricycle. There's three, but three what? Three tires on a tricycle, yeah. Good job. Yeah. Okay, so a trinomial, it's a polynomial, like what we've been doing, right? But a trinomial would be something like this. Well, something like that, right? So that'd be like 3x squared plus 2x minus 7. The trinomial, because there is 1, 2, 3 terms, right? So that's factoring a trinomial. Terms, remember, are just things that are separated by an addition or a subtraction sign with polynomials. Okay, so these have a special way to factor them. So, first off, what we're going to do here, if we were looking at these, right, we want to start to look for some patterns that arise if we expand these guys. So if we started off with x plus 3 times x plus 2, and we expand it down to that, right? So we expand it all. First off, this is just written a little bit different. Normally, when we expanded this guy, here I'll just write this again for a second. When we expanded that, x plus 3. So make sure you guys know what you're looking at. X plus 2. So expanding that, do you guys remember, foil or rainbow or everything else, right? So what that was, it was x times x, and then x times 2, right, for the first one? Okay, so the way that's written down here is this, right? X times x plus 2, right? Because that's what this is, x times both of those. That's really what we did when we expanded that out, right? That was that part of it. Now, the other part of it was this one, right? We went 3 times x, and then we went 3 times 2. Okay, well, that's this part of it, right? 3 times x and then 3 times 2, right? Can you guys kind of see that you would do the same thing there and there and then end up getting the same answer? All right, so it's just written a little bit different, and that's just to kind of help us look at it when we're going to factor this, okay? So that's what they've done. They say, okay, we start off with this. You can write it a little bit different. You can expand it all, and then you collect like terms to end up with this guy, right? So you guys were good at that on the quiz, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look for some patterns that are coming, because what we're after is we want to go from something like this, and we want to go backwards, right? That's what we're doing now. Instead of just expanding it all and then collecting like terms, we kind of need to do it all in reverse, right? And the way we're going to do this is we're going to look for some patterns that emerge. So notice like that if we were given, so if we were given this, right, the bottom one, that this first number, so x times x, gives you the leading one, right? That's going to be x squared, right? X times x gives you x squared when we did that. Without even doing anything in the middle, you can kind of see that pattern kind of emerging, right? Same thing with this one, right? 2x times x was 2x squared. That'll always be the number up front. 2x times 5x gives you 10x. And then x times x gives you x, right? So that's the first pattern that you can kind of just keep that in mind when we get going here, okay? So that's the first one. Next pattern that you'll notice is that the last two, right? The 3 and the 2, they multiply to the last number now, right? 3 times 2 is 6. Negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. And you'll see that again with all of them, right? So that's pattern number 2. Pattern number 3 is that when we did all this, these middle terms, right, the 2x and the 3x, they add to give us our middle term in the end, right? So 2x plus 3x is equal to 5x. This one, right, 4x minus 3x gave us x. If this doesn't make any sense, don't worry. I'm going to explain like why we're doing this in a second, right? We're going to use some of these patterns we're seeing to put it together. It probably won't make any sense to you what I'm talking about right now. Like you'll be like, so who cares, right? But all right, so that's that third pattern, and then let's move on to the fourth pattern. So this one is going to be a little bit tougher to see, but this is going to be like the key to doing this. Is that these middle two, right? The 2 and the 3, those two those two are going to multiply to the one or the first number times the last number. Let me say that again because it's a little bit confusing, right? Our middle two numbers, right, the 2 and the 3, they multiply to what the first number times the last number equal. So 6, right? 2 times 3 is 6, and the first number and the last number also equals 6. Like 1 and 6 equals 6. Let's look at like a little bit different number where like this one. Let's look at that one there. So 4 times -3 is what? -12, right? Well, look at this number up front. 2 times -6, that's also -12. You guys see that? All right, let's look at this one too. -4 times -15, that's going to equal +60, right? Well, it turns out 10 times 6, that also equals +60. So that's a pattern that we're gonna utilize here in a second. Okay, so that's the gist of it. So here he comes. Okay, so there's kind of a mouthful here. So it says the factoring trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, decompose bx into two terms whose coefficients have a sum of b and the product equal to a times c. All right, so you guys have that all figured out now? It probably didn't make any sense, right? That's what we're doing, but I'm going to explain just piece by piece what we're actually going to do here, okay? So, here is our basic steps for factoring trinomials. All right, so we are going to multiply a and c. Here, I'm going to give you guys an example here. So let's go like, here. I'm going to grab an actual one that'll work. X squared 5x 4. Okay, so let's say this was our example, right? X squared plus 5x plus 4. We're going to multiply a times c to produce a number. What the heck does that mean by a and c? Where did a and c come from? 2x? Yeah, you're right. But it's actually the number up front, and there is like a hidden little number up front, right? It's 1, right? And here, let's write it out again so you guys know what I mean. So the way this is written is ax squared plus bx plus c, right? So the a in this case is the number up front, the b is the 5, and the c is the 4. Okay, so that's when we say a and c, that's what we're talking about. So step number 1, we're going to multiply a and c to produce the number, right? So this is really like a 1 up front, right? So a, so this number, so a times c, right? 1 times 4. And then what I'd like you guys to do is write down like an m over in the corner. So write, because this will be what they multiply to. So 1 and 4 gives us 4, right? Okay, now it says list the factors of the number, right? So we need to figure out numbers that multiply to 4. So there's only a couple, right? So there'd be 2 times 2 and 1 times 4. All right, so just keep that in mind for a second, okay? Now it says find two find two factors of a number that add up to b, right? Add up to b. What number is b in this case? 5. We need to find these, like, so we need to add up to 5. So what I would do is write an A for add, and we need to add to 5. You guys are going to practice a lot. Like, this is probably the hardest thing we do in Math 10C, by the way, I think. This is usually the sticking point. So. Alright, so we need to multiply to 4, we need to add to 5, right? Looking at these numbers, which of these multiply to 4? Like which of these, 2 and 2 or 4 and 1? Which of those multiply to 4 and add to 5? 1 and 4, right? 1 and 4 do. So our numbers that we're looking for are 1 and 4, right? Those are the numbers that we're going to use. Okay, so we figured out the numbers that we're after. Okay, so we did that, and now, next step, it says decompose bx, that's this one, right? Bx into the two factors. You guys know what the word decompose means? Break down. We're going to break down this 5 into these numbers, into the ones we just found. So we're going to break, instead of a 5, it's going to be 1 and 4. So all we're going to do now is we're going to rewrite this as x squared plus, and then instead of a 5x, it's going to be a 1x and a 4x. Right? We're decomposing it into its parts. So that's going to be plus 1x plus 4x. Right? That's what that was. And then plus 4. All right, we did the new thing. Now, right? That's why this was important. Right? We got to this point on the board right now that we're doing, right? We know how to handle this now. What should we do if we want to factor it when it looks like this? You can look over here if you want. Maybe the squiggly brackets will help. We want to factor by decomposition is what this is called, and we want to factor by grouping. So we're going to factor just those two groups. Okay. All right. So looking at the first one here, we've got what's common to x squared and x. 1x or x. Just x, right? So we're going to factor out next. We've got x. Start a bracket, and then what you're left with is x plus 1. Now, I'm really hoping that this turns into x plus 1 on this next one, right? If it doesn't, I did it wrong. So what's common to 4x and 4? 4 is, right? And on this part, you have to factor out a positive 4. So you'd say plus 4. Start your bracket. And you've got x plus 1 still, right? The 4 is not gone. It's not 0. That's a common mistake, right? That's a 1 still. All right, good. We're pretty much done, right? We just need to pull it out now. What are my factors here? Yeah. Why is it a 1 still? It is. Here, let's write it again over here. So really, if we just looked at 4x plus 4, right? We were factoring that. Remember, when we factor things out, we're dividing them out. We're not subtracting. So we factored out. We say, okay, 4 is common to both. So then we say, okay, what's left? 4x divided by the 4 we took out is just x. What is 4 divided by 4? It's still 1, right? It's not 0. It's plus 1. That's a really common mistake. So does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just be careful in those because so often people just say they would say this. It would just be 4, and they'd call it x minus 0 or just x, right? But that's not right. All right. Okay. So back to this. Okay, we're really close here, right? Now, one of our factors is the one that shows up twice, so x plus 1, and the other one is what's left. So x plus 4. That's it. That was a lot of steps, wasn't it? Yeah. That's a really big multi-step problem. Tell you the truth, what happens with this? I'll tell you guys in the next one. Keep you in suspense. All right. Okay, so if you guys need to though, look back at this when you're trying to do these steps. This will be a helpful little table, right, to like give you the steps that you need to do to solve each of these things, right? All right. Let's do some practice problems because that's pretty much the idea. We've kind of done everything we need. And as far as algebra tiles go, I don't really care. You guys don't need to do algebra tiles. Okay. All right, guys. This is going to be a big, you just need to do a lot of questions in order to get your brain wrapped around these, right? So it's just, let's do this over and over until we get it. All right. First step, we need to find two numbers, like what I'm after is I want to multiply to something and I want to add to something, right? Okay, so yeah, 1 times 6, right? It's the number out front. number out front, which is a 1, times the 6. So the number that I need to multiply to here is 6. Okay, and now the numbers I need to add to, these same numbers need to add to what? 5. They need to add to the number in the middle, right? So they need to multiply to the two numbers, what they multiply to, and add to the middle number. So they need to add to 5. Okay, so I'm thinking the numbers that multiply to 6 first. So let's just write them down for a second. Numbers that multiply to 6. I've got 2 and 3. I've got 1 and 6. All right, so which of these numbers multiplies to 6 and adds to 2 and 3? So the numbers I'm after are 2 and 3. Okay, so we found our numbers. That's the first tough part, right? Now we're gonna put these back in, right? So we're gonna rewrite this as x squared plus, and then what am I doing here? I'm gonna rewrite it as 2x plus 3x plus 6. Now, would it matter if I wrote that as 3x plus 2x? Doesn't matter. You get the same answer in the end, or you should anyway, so it doesn't matter the order. Okay, now we're gonna put our squiggly brackets, right? Factor by grouping, it's called. All right, what's common to x squared plus 2x for this first one? It's just x. We got x, start a bracket, and we're left with x plus 2. Okay. Next one, what's common to 3x and 6? 3. And on this part, you have to say plus 3. You got to factor out a positive 3, so plus 3x, and then x plus 2 is left. Now you've done all the hard work, right? The answer is kind of staring us in the face at this point. X plus 2 and x. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake there. That shouldn't have been an x going on. That x shouldn't have been there. Okay. Okay, good. All right, you're doing better than I did then. All right. So x plus 3, right? Just what's left? X plus 3. And you know you did it right. As soon as you got those two that show up as doubles, you know you got that question right. So it's kind of it's a good way of like knowing like how you did on a quiz or whatever too, right? Because you'll be like, okay, I got that every time. I'm definitely right. All right. Now let's do the middle one. Okay. The numbers we're looking for need to multiply to what? 28, right? The first number, right? The front number times the last number, so 28. And they need to add to, yeah, and they need to add to negative 29. We haven't done much with negatives yet. All right, so I need numbers that add to 28 and multiply to 29. So let's just first off, if I'm not sure, let's figure out the factors of 28. So factors of 28, I've got what? 7. Yeah, 4 times 7. So I'm looking at that though, being like, okay, I can multiply at 28, but is there any way that I'm gonna get from 4 and 7 to add to negative 29? No, there's no way, right? That's not gonna be an answer. What about 1 and 28? Yeah. 28 and 1. Okay, well, but it's negative, right? So that's a problem. But what I do is I say, okay, I'm in the right ballpark because 28 and 1 is going to get me there. Now I just need to figure out the negatives and positives part of this, right? So let's just write down those numbers because I'm pretty sure that it's those. Now, if you look back to 28, right, positive 28, how can you multiply to a positive number? There's two ways, right? They can both be positive, or they could both be negative, right? That's the case here, right? They're both positive or they're both negative. So if they're both positive, that's going to add up to 29, right? Those will add up to 29. But what if they're both negative? Right, now they're going to add up to negative 29. So that's the case. They just both need to be negative now. Right, so now negative 28 times negative 1 is 28. Yeah, so everything's kind of working out here. So now we're going to do it again. So we'll rewrite this. Give myself much room. As x squared. And instead of negative 29, I'm going to write it as negative 28x minus 1x plus 28. And again, now we're going to just factor by grouping. So what's common to x squared and negative 28x? Just x, yeah. So x, start a bracket, and then you're left with x minus 28. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. Now, next one here, this one's a little bit weird because, again, I've got this negative out front. What do I want to factor out of this one? Negative, just negative 1. That's all I can do, right? Just negative 1 I'm going to factor out. Just to get rid of that negative is really what I'm doing here. So negative 1, start a bracket, and then I'm left with x. Oh, and this is a good sign. What's this going to be? Minus 28. So now, again, the answer is staring us in the face here now, right? So it's going to be x minus 28 and x minus 1.
If you think about it, you really don't have to do all that work because you pretty much get the answer with the start.
With the 28 and the 1?
Yeah.
Good observation. That was actually going to be the next lesson. I was going to kind of break it to you guys that, and the reason why that is, just now that you brought it up, is because of the 1 out front. Did you notice that both of these ones we've done, there's actually just been 1 out front? That actually will always be the case. So you can do a shortcut if you understand that. If you want to do that and say, okay, looking at this, right? You could just put your brackets down. They both get an x. And then these two numbers that we found, those will be those two numbers. But only when the number out front is 1, right? That's only going to be the time that'll work.
I was thinking, I was like, you have the answer, you did all this work, and you still got the answer you already had.
I'm really happy that you found the pattern. That's good. That's... All right, let's look at this one. Okay, I'm kind of right. So now this next one here, guys. I'm gonna erase it a little bit to. Just it's a little bit different now. This form, when I've got x squared minus 3xy and then 18y squared, it looks all super confusing now because I've thrown y's into the mix. Everything's handled exactly the same way. The only difference is on the end, like on this last one there would have just been a y on the end. Right, and that's really going to be the only difference. Everything else is handled exactly the same way. But it has to look like this. It's got to be like, you know, x squared, x and y, and then y squared on the end. That's the only time that that's going to work. So, what time is it? Do we got time? No, we don't. Okay, let's just do one more. Let's do one more of. We got 12 minutes. Yeah. I want to do one of these. Let's do this this middle one here. Actually, you know what? Let's do, just so we can do both at the same time. Let's do that one. So question 3, if possible, factor each trinomial. So again, everything's happening the same way, but you just have to notice this pattern. I have x squared, I've got y squared, and then xy in the middle. So that, like I said, it'll be very similar. So what do I need to multiply to here? Right, the number out front, right, or a value, times our last value there. There's really a 1 sitting there that we don't see, right? So we need to multiply to 6, right, and positive 6. And we need to add to negative 5. All right, so now I'm thinking, okay, what are my numbers that multiply to 6? Well, I've got 2 and 3, and I've got 6 and 1, right? Those are so 2 and 3. So 2 times 3. Yeah, so negative 2 and negative 3. You guys are good with that? All right, good call. All right, so negative 2 and negative 3 are the numbers I'm after. I'm going to put it back in here now, right? So we're going to write it out again. So we've got 6x squared minus 2, and you have to write xy with it as well now, right? So that's another little difference. 2xy minus 3xy. And then lastly, you've got just y, right? just plus y. Y squared, sir. Okay, we'll do it again. Factor by grouping. What's common to 6 and 2? Nope. Just 2. Yeah, just 2. Well, and then more stuff. So we've got 2 is common, and then what else? Just an x, right? So just an x. Start a bracket. 6 divided by the 2 that I took out is 3. And I still, so x squared divided by x is x. And then this 2, I went 2 divided by 2, right? And it's minus because negative 2 divided by 2 is negative still. That x is gone, right? So then, yeah, just y. You could say 1y if you like, and do the same thing. Start the bracket. Now let's look at the next one here, right? What's common to those guys? Y, right? And just be careful on this one. I want to factor out a negative y because I don't like that negative being out front. So I'm going to factor out negative y to this guy. So it's going to look like minus y. Start a bracket. And I'm really hoping it looks like this at the end, right? That's the goal here. So then we've got 3, right? 3. I've still got an x. And that y is gone, right? I divided it out. So that's a good sign, 3x and 3x. And then the sign changes on this one because I factored out a negative, right? This is now going to be plus y, right? Just, or sorry, not plus. Not plus. Minus just y. Hey, we did it. We did all the hard work. Now it's like staring us in the face, right? It's the one that shows up twice. And then what's left? So we've got 3x minus y times 2x minus y. I know there's a lot of steps there, guys. You need to practice. This isn't one that quite often kids will watch me do it and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I can do that. That all makes sense to me, right? That's only half of the equation. If it makes sense to you, that's a good sign. That means that you're going to have an easy time with it when you start doing it. But what always happens is that kids will get doing it themselves and they're like, oh yeah, I don't really notice that much, right? You need to practice to make sure that you've got this all ironed out. Alright, you guys good? So I'll leave it at that just for time's sake. And you guys have the assignment questions.
We don't have to go for child one, right?
Yeah, you could. I don't really care though. No, it's fine. Grade 10 to last week at CL for tough. Where's my